I raced through the rain-slick alley, my torn dress scraping blood from my knee, and behind me, Dominic's voice cut through the dark like a blade. "Run! Eleanor!" I stumbled and fell. 3 shadows closed in. A gun lifted. Then he appeared. Julian Thorne. His black eyes froze every movement. In just 3 breaths, steel met bone, sickening cracks echoed, and they collapsed like dominoes. He stepped forward, the scent of leather and sandalwood overpowering the smoke. His rough hand pulled me to my feet, holding me as tightly as steel cuffs warmed by flesh. At the end of the alley, Dominic screamed in fury. Julian leaned close, his deep voice sealing the air. "From this moment on, you belong to me." I had lost my freedom, or perhaps I had just touched destiny. The church bells tolled, heavy and somber like a final judgment. In the pristine white wedding dress, I felt like a young bird trapped in a golden cage, about to be sacrificed to a demon. Today was my fateful day, the day I was to marry Dominic, the cruel heir of a notorious mafia family. My breath came in gasps. Cold sweat beaded on my forehead, dampening the expensive satin fabric. From afar, I could feel Dominic's gaze, sharp and full of predatory hunger, tracing my body like an invisible knife. He smiled, a brutal smirk that revealed his triumph. I had heard terrifying stories about him, about how he crushed fragile roses in his hand, about the desperate screams of women who dared to defy him. I couldn't. I couldn't become one of them. My heart hammered in my chest, threatening to tear itself free and seek liberation. Every step I took down the red carpet toward the altar was an agony, a step closer to the abyss. My father, the man I once revered, stood there, his eyes vacant. He had sold me, a commodity exchanged for the safety of our small family, a temporary salvation from ruin. I looked at him, trying to find a glimmer of remorse, a sign of love, but saw only powerlessness and fear. It was the moment I knew I couldn't rely on anyone. There was only me, and the frantic will to survive burning in my chest. As the priest began the solemn vows, a wave of panic surged within me. No, not now. I looked around at the unfamiliar faces, the scrutinizing eyes, all part of a world I didn't belong to, a world I desperately wanted to escape. My hands trembled, clutching the bridal bouquet. A crazy idea flashed in my mind, a faint light in the absolute darkness. This was my only chance. Taking advantage of a momentary lapse in attention, when everyone's eyes were focused on Dominic reading his vows, I spun around. No plan, no destination, just the pure instinct of survival. The wedding dress was cumbersome, hindering my steps, but I couldn't stop. I ran as fast as I could through the deserted hallway behind the church, where only little-noticed side doors were located. My breath was ragged. My lungs burned. The sound of my gown sweeping across the marble floor was jarring, like a drum signaling betrayal. I had to be faster. Faster. I dashed outside, into the cold night. The damp, frigid air slapped my face, but it was a strangely refreshing sensation. For the first time in hours, I felt alive, if only for a second. I ran through the mansion's sprawling garden, rose thorns tearing at my dress and skin. The pain was insignificant compared to the terror that clung to me. I heard shouting, hurried footsteps close behind. They had discovered my escape. They were chasing me. My legs didn't stop, scrambling over the iron fence, onto the deserted road. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to run far away, far from Dominic, far from the destiny that had been arranged. The faint streetlights cast blurry beams on the desolate street, creating flickering shadows like lurking demons. I tripped, my knee scraping hard against the cold concrete pavement, a sharp pain searing through my leg. But I couldn't stop. Fear drove me to stand up and keep running. Then, in my most desperate moment, a strange sound tore through the quiet night. The screech of tires was deafening, a loud crash, and the dry, sharp sounds of gunfire echoed. I stumbled into a dark alley, my heart pounding as if it would leap out of my chest. I shrank into myself, trying to blend into the shadows, hoping no one would see me. Shouts, the sounds of scuffling and punching, it all created a horrifying symphony of violence. This wasn't the police. This was an execution. From the darkness, a tall, imposing figure emerged. It was a man. He stood amidst the chaos, like a god of death. The faint light from the street lamp reflected on his immaculate black suit jacket, highlighting the sharp features of his face. His eyes, dark and deep as an abyss, swept over the chaotic scene, then stopped where I was hiding. A cold, scrutinizing gaze that froze my entire body. He said nothing, just slightly curved his lips, a small, barely perceptible smile, yet it sent chills down my spine. The remaining members of the rival gang dropped at his feet, silently. He walked, slowly, fluidly, like a predatory cat in the night. Then he stopped, right in front of me. The faint smell of gunpowder hung in the air, mingling with the scent of leather and a powerful, masculine fragrance. I looked up at him, my eyes wide with horror and fear. For the first time in my life, I felt how small and helpless I truly was. He didn't touch me, but his mere presence was enough to overwhelm all my senses. I noticed the small details, the shiny wristwatch under the moonlight, the intricate tattoo hidden on his wrist, and the deadly coldness in his eyes. "Who are you?" His voice was deep, cold, yet held a strange magnetic pull that kept me from looking away. It wasn't a question. It was a command. I tried to answer, but my throat was parched. I couldn't utter a sound. Tears streamed down my face, mixing with the dirt and sweat. My wedding dress was soiled and tattered, a testament to my frantic escape. His gaze flicked down to my white dress, then back to my frightened eyes. Something flashed in those deep eyes. Curiosity, or something deeper. He reached out, his fingers long and slender, lightly touching a strand of my messy hair. A gentle touch, yet it felt like an electric shock running through my entire body. Little bird. Lost? His voice carried a hint of mockery, but an inexplicable gentleness was concealed within it. I shook my head, trying to back away, but he was faster. He grabbed my arm, pulling me to my feet. His strength was incredible, yet his touch wasn't brutal. It was like a hold, a control. I looked at him, this man, who had just carried out a cold-blooded massacre, now holding me. "Don't be afraid," he said, his voice deeper. "You're safe now. With me." He led me out of the dark alley to a waiting black luxury car. The car door was opened by another man, dressed formally, but with sharp, cold eyes. I was gently pushed into the back seat. The car glided smoothly, leaving the distant siren sounds echoing behind us. Through the window, I saw the flashing red and blue lights, the debris of the battle scattered on the road. It was a world I had just escaped, and also a world I had just stumbled into. The man, Cashin, sat beside me. He didn't say another word, just stared straight ahead, but I felt his strong presence, his absolute control over everything around him. I rested my head against the seat back, feeling utterly exhausted. The fear was still there, but now it mixed with a strange sense of relief. I had escaped Dominic, but was I truly free? The car sped into the night, moving away from the noisy city. I looked out the window. The lights gradually receded, replaced by dark rows of trees. A large manor came into sight, magnificent and ancient, yet full of mystery. Cassian led me inside, through long, marble-tiled hallways, past opulent rooms filled with expensive art. The contrast between my shabby state and the lavish luxury of this place was stark, like a reminder of the abyss I had just crossed, and the world of power I had just entered. He led me to a warm, luxurious room. "Take a bath. Someone will bring you food." His voice was still cold, but held a hint of underlying concern. Then he turned and walked out, leaving me alone in the lavish room. I looked around, feeling dizzy. From a hellish altar, I was thrown into a power struggle, and then landed in a place like this. Everything happened too fast, too unexpectedly. I collapsed onto the floor, my torn wedding dress clinging to my tired body. Hot tears streamed down my face, no longer from fear, but from shock and a sense of being lost. I had survived, but at what cost? And I wondered, was this deliverance the beginning of another prison, more beautiful, but equally terrifying? The following day passed in a hazy state, as if I were living in a dream, or a meticulously staged nightmare. Cassian's penthouse was both a secure fortress and a golden prison. He hadn't confined me with chains, but his presence, his watchful eyes, and the absence of outside information created an invisible wall that suffocated me. I spent most of my time wandering the vast apartment, trying to understand the man who saved me. Cassian was not an open person. He lived a terrifyingly organized life. Every item had its place. Every book was arranged in a specific order. I found books on international law, on the underground economy, on military techniques, all foreign and frightening to the world I once knew. They were small pieces about a man whose whole picture I could never truly grasp. He always wore dark, tailored clothes, lending an air of military precision, highlighting his strong, powerful physique. When he moved, it was a combination of raw power and the grace of a predator. I often caught him standing by the window, looking down at the distant city, his face etched with deep contemplation. In those moments, he looked so lonely, like a cursed king on his throne. Our meals were conducted in silence. Cassian didn't talk much, but when he spoke, it was always blunt, sharp questions. What do you know about your father's dealings? Who were the people who frequently visited the mansion but weren't on the official guest list? Did your father hide anything special, something only you or your mother knew? Initially, I denied, even raged. My family didn't do anything wrong, I yelled, though deep down, I knew I was lying. My father is a respected man. Cassian just looked at me with emotionless eyes. Your innocence is admirable, Alara, but it won't save you. After each time he questioned me, I questioned myself. Memories began to flood back. My father's secret late-night phone calls, the strange guests visiting the mansion with locked leather briefcases, the unmarked cars parked outside the gate. I had tried to ignore them, tried to believe they were just complicated business matters of my father's. But now, under Cassian's scrutinizing gaze, the veil over my eyes began to collapse. I discovered a skill of mine that Cassian seemed to have vaguely realized. Since childhood, I had an excellent photographic memory, especially for numbers and codes. My father, during drunken moments, would sometimes mumble about the ciphers he used to secure information. And I, during sleepless nights, had unconsciously memorized those jumbled sequences of numbers. Cassian discovered this when I accidentally mentioned a time I helped my father decode a corrupted document, not knowing what the document was. You can decode a complex data string just by looking at it? Cassian asked, a strange gleam sparking in his eyes. Like sequences of numbers that mean nothing to an ordinary person, but for you, they form a logical structure? I nodded, confused. Yes. Sometimes. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. Cassian smirked, a rare smile that felt colder than friendly. Interesting. Very interesting. From then on, he started bringing back documents, USB drives filled with numbers, complex characters. They were financial records, encrypted transaction logs, intricate network maps. He sat beside me, sometimes just silently observing, sometimes guiding me with professional terminology I had never heard of. Look for signs of illegal transactions, any anomalies in the cash flow, or names that repeat in offshore accounts. I immersed myself in the work, unconsciously. My brain worked relentlessly, connecting the pieces, organizing the numbers. Every time I found something, a connection, a critical clue, Cassian looked at me with satisfaction, as if he had just found an expensive new toy. I was his partner, not entirely a prisoner. But this cooperation only pulled me deeper into his world, and the dark world of my family. In the intense moments of work, Cassian sometimes showed an unexpected tenderness. One night, when I was too focused on the computer screen to eat, he suddenly placed a bowl of hot soup in front of me. "Eat, Elara. You can't work on an empty stomach." His voice was still low and gravelly, but no longer as cold as before. Another time, when I shivered unexpectedly from the cold, he silently placed a soft blanket over my shoulders. That small gesture, in the context of this chaotic and mysterious life, became profoundly meaningful. It confused me. It made me despise myself. How could I feel warm from a man I didn't truly trust? A man who might be the destroyer of my family? In those moments, my heart was torn. I was attracted to the strength and protection Cassian provided. He was my only safe haven in a world that was collapsing. But at the same time, I felt disgust towards myself for that attraction. My family, regardless of what they did, they were still my flesh and blood. And this man, he was exposing all their sins, little by little. One evening, as I was struggling to decode an extremely complex data file, Cassian sat across from me, watching intently. I felt his gaze like sharp needles, piercing into my soul. "Your father." "He was an intelligent man," he said, breaking the silence. "But he made a mistake. He crossed a line that no one should cross." "What line?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked at me, his cold eyes suddenly flaring with a hint of pain. "Don't get involved with innocent lives. Especially children." Those words sent a shiver down my spine. I had never considered that my father's activities could be so terrible. It was a scar, an obsession in Cassian's soul that I had never known. He seemed particularly sensitive to vulnerable victims, people unable to protect themselves. That made me wonder, what in his past made him carry that obsession? Could it be that very obsession that drove him to act, to become an undercover agent, infiltrating the underworld to punish those who committed such crimes? Small pieces of Cassian gradually emerged, but they only made him more mysterious. He was a man of rules, moral principles he never broke. Unless it was for me. I had noticed that. He frequently checked his phone, having short calls in a coded language I didn't understand. But he always prioritized my safety above all else. When there were signs of danger outside, he would immediately take me to another location or increase the security of the apartment. One night, I accidentally overheard a fragment of his phone conversation. His voice was low and gravelly, but full of authority. "I know, but the priority target is her safety. Nothing is allowed to happen to her." There was a sound of someone on the other end objecting, but Cassian cut them off with an icy voice. "I'm not asking for an opinion. That's an order." I knew he was breaking some important rule in his world for me. That made me feel both afraid and loved. A twisted, dark kind of love, but undeniable. One afternoon, as I was decoding a complex plan for money laundering through charity funds, I suddenly saw Cassian standing behind me. He placed his hand on my shoulder, a light touch that still made my whole body jump. "You did very well, Elara," his voice whispered in my ear. His warm breath on my neck sent a shiver through me. "Thanks to you, we are closer to exposing everything." I turned to look at him, his eyes deep as a bottomless abyss. In that moment, I saw admiration, possessiveness, and a dark emotion I couldn't name. It terrified me, but it also made my heart skip a beat uncontrollably. He leaned down, his hair brushing mine, his masculine scent enveloping me. "I will protect you, Elara," he whispered. "I will not let anyone harm you. No one." That promise not only guaranteed safety, but was also an invisible chain binding me to him forever. That gaze, that promise, was both tender protection and an undeniable assertion of ownership. It made me wonder if I was stepping into a trap even greater than the one my family had created. A love trap, woven from secrets and power. The security wall of Cassian, which I had absolute faith in, eventually collapsed. It was a pouring afternoon, and I was sitting in the living room, trying to chase away the heavy thoughts about my family and the terrifying secrets I had uncovered. Cassian had gone out on a mission. He said it was an important meeting to deal with the consequences of the information I had helped him decode. I was left alone in the vast apartment, feeling more isolated than ever. Suddenly, the silent security system of the apartment flickered a dim red light, a sign Cassian had told me meant intrusion. My heart clenched, pounding relentlessly. Who? How was this possible? This apartment was a fortress. I rushed to the security monitor, my hands trembling. On the screen, I saw dark figures moving in the corridor outside the apartment. They were not strangers. Familiar silhouettes of the bodyguards who used to work for my father, the cold faces I had seen at social parties. They had come for me. Utter fear enveloped me. I no longer had Cassian here to protect me. I was alone, facing the people my family had hired to do what? To silence me, perhaps? The apartment's bulletproof door began to shake violently under heavy blows. The sound of clashing metal and shattering glass echoed throughout the apartment. I curled up, tears streaming down my face. I wanted to call Cassian, wanted him to return, but my phone... It was dead. I was a victim, completely helpless. Just when I thought everything was over, a louder explosion came from the balcony window. A cold gust of wind rushed into the room, followed by a familiar, towering figure emerging through the rain. Cassian. He appeared like a god of the night, a whirlwind of destruction. His eyes burned in the darkness, not with fear, but with a fierce fury. He did not utter a word. He only acted. With a decisive gesture, the gun in his hand fired. The loud crack of the gun ripped through the air, followed by the thud of a man outside the window falling. Cassian spun around, moving like lightning. He did not hesitate, showed no mercy. He was a perfect fighting machine, tempered through countless battles. Every strike, every shot was precise, lethal. I had never seen him so brutal, so cold. This was not the man who had gently placed a blanket over me, or brought me soup. This was a demon, a dangerous predator, born to destroy. In that moment of chaos, while the intruders were still struggling to get through the broken door, I accidentally saw something. A phone belonging to one of the men Cassian had taken down, lying on the floor. The phone screen was still lit, displaying an unsent text message. Target identified. Elara is in. And below that text was a photo of me, taken from outside the apartment, through the window frame. But what truly stunned me was not the photo. It was the message below. Eliminate everyone, including the girl. And the sender was a code I had once decoded for Cassian. It was the code of a high-ranking figure in the organization Cassian was working for. It couldn't be. I backed away, hitting the cold wall. I looked at Cassian, who was fighting fiercely with the attackers, his face cold and resolute. The goal was to eliminate everyone, including the girl. So he was assigned to execute my family. All of them. And I was also on that list. That truth was like a freezing dagger, severing every thread of affection I had foolishly woven. Cassian. He wasn't my savior. He was part of the plan to destroy my family. He was an undercover agent, and he was tasked to eliminate all the people I loved. His protection, his unexpected tenderness. Was it all just an act? Or had he changed? I stood there, dazed, as Cassian finished the battle. The intruders were mercilessly taken down, lying scattered on the floor. Bright red blood stained the pristine white rug. The smell of gunpowder and the metallic scent of blood stung my nostrils, but I no longer felt fear. Instead, there was an extreme emptiness. Cassian turned to look at me, his face smeared with a few streaks of blood. He looked savage, terrifying, but his eyes flared with a flicker of worry when he saw me. He walked towards me, his blood-stained boots crunching on broken glass. "Elara," his voice was low and gravelly, like a beast's growl. "Are you okay?" He reached out to touch me, but I stepped back, my eyes full of revulsion. Who are you?" I whispered, my voice breaking. "What was your mission?" Cassian stopped, his hands suspended in midair. His eyes shifted, from worry to something darker, more dangerous. He knew. He knew I had found out. He stepped closer, every stride decisive, authoritative. He was not a mere man. He was a hunter, and I was his prey. "I saved you," he said, his voice cold as ice. "I kept you safe." "Safe for what?" I almost screamed. "So you could complete your mission? The mission to execute my family? All of them?" Cassian said nothing, but his silence confirmed everything. My tears streamed out, not from fear, but from the ultimate betrayal. I had trusted him. I had felt safe with him. I had loved him. And he was my destroyer. Cassian advanced, his powerful hand gripping my chin, tilting my face up to force me to face him. His eyes no longer held fake tenderness. Now, they were pure possessiveness, cold and deadly. "Elara," he said, his voice low and gravelly, echoing in the room filled with the smell of blood and death. "Your family paid the price for their sins. That is part of justice. I cannot change that." "Then what about me?" I asked, my voice choked. "Am I also part of that justice? Will you execute me too?" Cassian's eyes narrowed, a dangerous spark flashing. "No. You are not like them. You are mine, Elara." He leaned down, his lips finding mine in a brutal, violent kiss. It was not a kiss of love, but a kiss of conquest, of power. I resisted, hitting his chest, but he was too strong. He held me tightly, as if wanting to crush me against his massive body. "You are mine," he whispered into my ear, between desperate kisses. "No matter how much you hate me, no matter where you try to run, you are still mine. I won't let anyone touch you. No one." That declaration, amidst the blood and death, made me realize a horrifying truth. His love was not a salvation, but a curse. He would protect me, keep me by his side, but in return, I would forever be his hostage, the hostage of this dark, twisted love. That truth was like a gaping wound in my chest. I loved him, but he was my destroyer. A love built on betrayal, on a foundation of blood and tears. It was a forbidden love, a love I knew would never have a happy ending. I was trapped, between love and hatred, between life and death, and I didn't know what I would choose. The days following the battle were a haze of waiting and chaotic emotions. The manor was shrouded in an eerie stillness, but it wasn't peace. It was the calm after a great storm, a stillness containing too much of what had been lost and what had been gained. The traces of the battle were still there. Shattered walls, broken glass, and the lingering smell of gunpowder in the air. I stayed in the room, waiting. Cassian had vanished since that night, leaving me alone with relentless thoughts. I didn't know what he was doing, or where he had gone. I only knew he had been hurt, and the worry for his safety, surprisingly, consumed my mind. I couldn't believe I could care for a man like that, a ruthless and dangerous man. But he was the only one who had protected me, the only one who had given me a refuge, even if it was a golden cage. Every sound outside made me jump. I looked out the window. The scenery outside was the same, but I felt a profound change within myself. I was no longer the innocent girl running from her wedding. I had witnessed death, felt the brutality, and been drawn into the darkness. I despised myself for this change, for the strange acceptance of his world, for the desperate craving to see him return, even if it was a blood-soaked silhouette. That afternoon, my door gently opened. Cassian walked in. He no longer had the majestic swagger of a powerful leader. A simple black shirt clung to his body, but the injuries were visible. One shoulder was bandaged, and his step was slightly limping. His face was pale, tired, but his eyes were still sharp, and they never left me. Elara. He called my name, his voice hoarse, yet strangely warm. I ran to him, without thinking. Are you okay? He gave a tired but compelling smirk. I'm fine. Just a few scrapes. But I knew that wasn't the truth. I could see the pain in his eyes, the exhaustion in his every gesture. He had fought a fierce battle, all for me. Sit down, I said, my voice softer. I helped him sit down on the nearby sofa. He looked at me, his eyes gleaming with an unreadable emotion. Are you worried about me? I blushed. I couldn't deny it. You saved me. And you are mine, he said, his voice deep, carrying an undeniable possessiveness. I don't allow anyone to harm what belongs to me. He reached out, gently stroking my hair. His touch, though weak, still held a strange power. You are not an object, Elara. You are a part of me. In that moment, I looked at him, at those tired yet resilient eyes. He had been through hell to protect me, to eliminate Dominic, to keep his promise. His enemy's blood still stained his hand. The smell of gunpowder still lingered on his clothes, but none of that repulsed me. Instead, a warm feeling, a profound connection, bloomed inside me. His violence, his ruthlessness, it was all romanticized into an absolute protection. Love, or something akin to it, was blossoming in the darkness. Cassian looked at me, his eyes deep. Do you know why I did it? I shook my head. Dominic. He wasn't just my enemy. His voice lowered, a shadow covering his face. He was a brutal man. He committed many atrocities, especially against women and children. I've seen too much. Women tortured by him, children ruined by him. He paused, his eyes distant, as if lost in painful memories. I couldn't bear it. I couldn't let anyone else go through what they did. I looked at him, feeling a deep understanding. This was his motivation. This was his weakness. He was a demon, but he had a heart scarred by the world's brutality, and he chose to fight it with his own ruthlessness. You ran from him, he continued, his eyes returning to me. You are a victim, and I couldn't let him ruin anyone else, especially you. I placed my hand on his. My touch trembled, but he didn't pull away. He gripped my hand tightly, a grasp full of certainty and strength. I'm afraid of you, I confessed, my voice so low it was barely audible. But I also... He looked at me, his eyes encouraging me to continue. I also feel safe with you, I said, my tears streaming again. I despise myself for it. I despise being attracted to you, despise that I feel like I belong to you. A small, genuine smile appeared on his lips. That's what I wanted to hear, Elara. He pulled me closer, holding me tight. His embrace was strong, yet incredibly gentle, as if I were the most fragile thing in the world. I rested my head on his shoulder, feeling the warmth of his body, his signature scent. All my fear, all the inner conflict, seemed to melt away. In that moment, I knew I had found my place, even if it was in the arms of a mafia boss, in a world full of violence and darkness. I felt peace, a peace I never thought I would find. Perhaps this was my destiny. Perhaps, in this darkness, I had found a light. Cassian whispered in my ear, his voice low and full of absolute possessiveness. You are mine. Forever. And as his arm tightened around me, I knew that all fear, all conflict had vanished, leaving only one cold truth. I belonged to this man, forever. But was this the end, or just the beginning of a curse? The dawn of a new day broke, casting golden sunlight through my window. It was a serene sunrise, unlike the chaos and gloom of the previous days. Dominic had been dealt with. The greatest threat was gone. A rare stillness enveloped Cassian's manor, a stillness I knew was built on a foundation of violence and sacrifice. I woke up in Cassian's arms. He was still asleep, his breathing steady, his face much more relaxed than I had ever seen it. Although the wound on his shoulder was still painful, he was no longer strained by the battle. I gently stirred, trying not to wake him. I looked at his face, the sharp features, his eyebrows slightly furrowed even in sleep. This was the man who saved me, protected me, and inexplicably captured my heart. A warm feeling swelled within me. I was no longer afraid of him. I no longer despised myself for being attracted to him. Instead, I accepted it. Accepted who he truly was, accepted his world, and accepted my place within it. He was the darkness, but he was the darkness that enveloped me, protecting me from other demons. Cassian gently opened his eyes, his gaze meeting mine. A small, genuine smile appeared on his lips. "Good morning, Elara." His voice was hoarse, but still full of tenderness. "Good morning, Cassian," I replied, my voice equally soft. He reached out, stroking my hair. "It's over now. Dominic will never bother us again." I nodded. "I know. And you?" He paused, his eyes looking deeply into mine. "You will stay with me." It wasn't a question, but a statement. A statement I no longer wanted to refuse. "I want to stay," I replied. He pulled me closer, holding me tight. "Good. Because I will never let you go." His voice was low, carrying absolute possessiveness, but I felt it was no longer a chain, but an invisible bond. In the following days, Cassian slowly began to recover. He was no longer rushed, dedicating more time to me. He showed me other facets of himself, aspects I had never imagined. He took me for walks in the manor's vast garden, telling me about the trees he loved, about the old stories of his family. I realized he was not just a cold mafia boss, but also a man with depth, with his own pain and desires. I began to use my skills to help him in the reconstruction of the manor after the battle, as well as reinforcing the security system. I was not just a partner, but an accomplice. I had found a purpose in his world, a purpose I never had while living under my family's control. I was no longer the weak, fleeing Elara, but a strong, confident Elara, standing firmly beside the most powerful man in the region. One afternoon, Cassian took me to a small hill behind the manor. From there, we could see the entire landscape below. Green fields stretching out, small houses hidden in the morning mist, and further in the distance was the horizon where the sun was setting, coloring the entire sky red. "This is where I used to come when I was a child," Cassian said, his voice low, with a hint of nostalgia. "Where I could see the whole world, and dream of something different." I looked at him, feeling the change in him. He was no longer so cold, so distant. He had opened up to me, if only slightly. "Now, you have the world in your hands," I said. He turned to look at me, his eyes sparkling under the sunset light. "No." He gently shook his head. "I have something more important. I have you." He took my hand, intertwining his fingers with mine. His grip was strong, warm, full of certainty. "This world is chaotic, Elara, but you brought an order to it. You are the light in my darkness." I rested my head on his shoulder, feeling an unusual peace. We stood there, looking toward the horizon, where the sun was gradually sinking, promising another day to come. Our future was not a fairy tale with eternal happiness in a white castle. It was a long, arduous road, but we would walk it together, overcoming every challenge. Cassian didn't promise a lavish wedding or children. He didn't talk about a normal life, away from the underworld. He only promised safety, protection, and a future we would build together, in our own way. We, two lost souls, had found each other in the darkness, and now we would write our own destiny. The sunrise painted the horizon red, promising a new day. And I, standing next to the man of the night, felt a fragile hope. That perhaps, in his arms, I had found a kind of freedom, a kind of happiness of my own. A new chapter had opened, and we, two lost souls, would write our destiny together, no matter how dark it might be.